Chapter 54, next paragraph. Krishna defeats all princes and takes Rukmini home at Dvaraka. In this way, all the princes led by Jarāsandha became very angry on the action of Krishna, kidnapping Rukmini, and because they fell down from the back of their horses and elephants, broken by the beauty of Rukmini, now they began to stand up and equip themselves with their weapons properly, fitted up their bows and arrows, and began to run after Krishna on their respective chariots, horses and elephants. To check the progress of the opposing princess, the soldiers of Yadu dynasty also faced them. A terrible fighting began between the two belligerent groups. The princes on the opposite side of Krishna were led by Jarāsandha, and all of them were very expert in fighting. As that they began to throw their arrows, the soldiers of Yadu, exactly like the cloud on the head of a mountain, splashes torrents of rain. Cloud gathered on the head of the mountain does not move very much. Therefore, force of rain is much severe on the mountain than on the land. Similarly, the opposing princes were determined to defeat Kṛṣṇa and take back Rukmini from his custody, and they fought with him as severely as possible. Rukmini was seated by the side of Kṛṣṇa when she saw that the bunches of arrows from the opposing party on the head of the soldiers of Yadu has clouded too much. She began to look on the face of Kṛṣṇa in a fearful attitude, expressing her gratefulness that Kṛṣṇa had taken so much risk only for herself. Her eyes were moving and she appeared to be very much shy. Kṛṣṇa could immediately understand the intention of Rukmini, encouraged her with the words, "My dear Rukmini, don't worry. You will see very soon the soldiers of the Yadu dynasty will kill all the opposing soldiers without delay." While Kṛṣṇa was speaking with Rukmini, the commanders of the Yadu dynasty soldiers, headed by Lord Balaram, who is known as Sankarsana, as well as Goda, not tolerate the defiant attitude of opposing soldiers, that began to strike over the horses, elephants and chariots of the enemies by their own arrows. When the fighting was thus going on, it was seen that the princes and soldiers of the enemy camp on the back of the horses, elephants, or on the chariots began to fall down, cut off their heads with all kinds of helmets and earrings. Within a very short time, it was seen that millions of heads were cut down and fell on the battlefield. Their hands were cut off with their bows and arrows and clubs. One arm was piled over another, one thigh was piled over another thigh, one horse was piled over another horse. Similarly, other animals also, camels, elephants, asses, and after all, the infantry soldiers, all their heads were cut off and fell down. In this way, when the opposing enemies headed by Jarāsandha found that they were gradually being defeated by the soldiers of Kṛṣna, they thought it why they should lose in the battle for the sake of take the Raj. Actually, Srila was to fight himself for rescuing Rukmini from the hands of Kṛṣna. But when they saw that Srila was not competent enough to fight with Kṛṣna, they decided not to lose their strength unnecessarily, and therefore they ceased fighting and dispersed themselves hither and thither. Some of the princes, of course, as a matter of etiquette, of course, had lost all kinds of energy, all luster of his body disappeared. They began to address Srila, defeating a formality only, and addressed him, my dear Srila, you are the chief amongst the fighters. You belong to the royal order. Don't be discouraged in this way. For an active person like you, there is no question of distress or happiness, because none of the conditions are everlasting. Better you take courage, don't be disappointed by this reverse position of your present situation. After all, we are not the final actor. We all of us are exactly dancing like the puppets in the hands of a magician. We are all dancing by the will of the Supreme, and according to his plan only we suffer distress or enjoy happiness. We should therefore be equipoised in all circumstances. In other words, with princes being defeated, there was no other alternative than to encourage Srila in such flattering words. Although in the beginning they were very much hopeful in their heroic action. Thus Srila, instead of marrying Rukmini, had to be satisfied to the flattering words of his friends, and certainly in frustration he had to go back to his place. The other kings who had come to assist him, also being disappointed, returned to their respective homes. Next verse. After all, the whole catastrophe was due to the envious nature of Rukmini's eldest brother, Rukmini. Now, Rukmini, having seen that his sister, Rukmini, had been forcibly married by Kṛṣna or taken away, and his plan to get her married with Srila was frustrated. So, on the return of his expected brother-in-law, Srila, and his friends to their respective homes, Rukmini personally became very much agitated and determined to teach some lessons to Kṛṣna, and called for his own soldiers one division of military flanks of Kṛṣṇa, which consists of several thousands of elephants, horses, chariots, and infantry soldiers. So, equipped with this military strength, he began to follow Kṛṣna up to Dvāraka. Rukmini, in order to show his prestige, began to promise before all the returning kings that you could not tell Srila in the matter of his marriage with my sister Rukmini, but I cannot allow Rukmini to be taken away by Kṛṣna. I shall teach him some lessons. Now I am going there. This way he dressed himself as a big commander and promised before all the princes present that unless I kill Kṛṣna in this fight and bring back my sister from his clutches. I shall no more return to my capital city, Kundin. I'm just promising this vow before you all, and you see that I shall fulfill it. Thus, after vibrating all these high-sounding words about his own heroism, Rukmini immediately got up on his chariot and asked his chariot driver to proceed to that place where Kṛṣṇa is there. He says, I want to fight with him immediately. He further says that this cowherd boy has become very much proud on account of his tricky way to fight with the Kshatriyas, but today I shall teach him a good lesson. Because he has got the impudency to kidnap my sister, I shall teach him very good lessons with my sharpened arrows. Thus, this unintelligent man, Rukmini, without having any knowledge of the measurement of strength and activity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, began to vibrate various kinds of impudent vituperation, and in great stupidity stood before Kṛṣṇa, asking him repeatedly that you stop for a minute and fight with me. After saying this, he struck up his bow very tightly and threw 3 forceful arrows against Kṛṣṇa's body. And he condemned Kṛṣṇa as the most abominable descendant of Yadu dynasty. He asked him to stand before him for a minute, and he would teach him good lessons. You are carrying away my sister exactly like the crow stealing clarified butter meant for being used in the sacrifice. You are simply proud of your military strength, but you cannot fight in regulative principles. You have stolen my sister. Now I shall relieve you from your false prestige. You can keep my sister under your possession so long you do not lie down on the ground for goats being bitten by my arrows. But Kṛṣṇa, after hearing from Rukmini all these crazy words, immediately he took his arrow and cut off the string of his bow, so that he was made unable immediately to use any other arrow. Rukmini also immediately took care of another bow, and thus he threw another 5 arrows upon Kṛṣṇa. Kṛṣṇa being attacked for the second time by Rukmini, he again cut off the string of his bow. Rukmini again took a third bow, and Kṛṣṇa again cut off the string of the bow for the third time also. This time, in order to teach Rukmini his lesson, Kṛṣṇa threw 6 arrows on Rukmini personally, and after this he threw again 8 arrows, out of which he killed his 2 horses by 2 arrows. He killed the chariot driver by 1 arrow, within brackets. He killed 4 horses by 4 arrows, and by the remaining 3 arrows he chopped off the upper portion of his chariot with the flag. When Rukmini was finished of all his arrows, he took the assistance of other weapons like swords, shields, tridents, lances, and similar other weapons. The assistance of other weapons like swords, shields, tridents, lances, and similar other weapons used for fighting hand to hand. But Kṛṣṇa, in the same way, cuts them all immediately. Now, Rukmini, being repeatedly baffled in his attempt, he simply took his sword, now began to run very forcibly towards Kṛṣna with his sword only, exactly like the fly proceeds towards fire with great force. As soon as Rukmini came forward before Kṛṣna, he immediately cut his weapon into pieces. This time Kṛṣna took his sharpened sword and tried to kill him immediately. Rukmini's sister Rukmini could understand that this time Kṛṣna will not excuse her brothers. Therefore, trembling with great fear, fell down immediately on the lotus feet of Kṛṣna, and in a very piteous tone began to address her husband as follows. Rukmini addressed Kṛṣna as Yogeshwara. This Yogeshwara means possessed of inconceivable opulences or energies, whereas his brother was only with limited potency or military strength. Kṛṣna is immeasurable, whereas his brother is measured in every step of his life. For he was not even comparable to an insignificant insect with the unlimited power of Kṛṣna. He also addressed him as the gods of the gods. There are many powerful demigods like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, Chandra, Varuna, Sun, Moon. But Kṛṣna was also Lord for them, whereas his brother was ordinary human being, and that also lowest of them, because he had no idea what Kṛṣna is. In other words, a human being who has no conception of the actual position of Kṛṣna is lowest of the human society. Kṛṣna was also addressed as Jagatpati, the master of the whole cosmic manifestation, and his brother was only an ordinary prince. Kṛṣna is also addressed as Mahabhuja, which means with unlimited strength. In this way, Rukmini compared the position of his brother and that of Kṛṣna, and very feelingly appealed to her husband to excuse his brothers so that he may not be killed in the auspicious situation of their being united together. In other words, she submitted her real position as woman. She was so happy to get Kṛṣna as her husband, and in that moment, if that marriage is performed at the cost of his own elder brother, who, after all, in his calculations, loved the younger sister and wanted to hand her over to a better man in his own calculation. In this way, while Rukmini was praying for the life of her brother from Kṛṣna, his whole body was trembling, and being fully anxious, her face appeared to be dried up. Her throat became choked up. On account of her dexterity, the ornaments of her body became scattered and fell down on the ground. This manner, when Rukmini was very much perturbed and fell down on the ground, Lord Kṛṣna immediately became compassionate and stopped killing the foolish aggressor Rukmini. But at the same time, he wanted to give him some light punishment, so he tied him up with some cloth piece, and his shape are moustaches and beard and hair, keeping some spots here and there. While Krishna was sitting with Rukmini in this way, the soldiers of the dynasty, commanded by Balaram himself, exasperated the whole strength of Rukmini, exactly like the elephant destroys the feeble stem of lotus flower in the tank. In other words, as an elephant breaks the whole construction of lotus flower in the reservoir of water while taking birth, similarly, the military strength of Rukmini appeared to be as feeble as the lotus stem before the elephant. But when the commanders of the dynasty came back to see Kṛṣṇa, they were all surprised to see the condition of Rukmini in that position. Especially Lord Balaram became too much compassionate with his sister-in-law, now newly married with his brother. Not to please Rukmini, Balaram personally tried the finding of Rukmini so that his sister may be pleased. And in order to please her, as elder brother of Kṛṣṇa, he spoke some words of chastisement. Kṛṣṇa, your action like this is not at all satisfactory. It is very much abominable to our family tradition. However, Rukmini might have been, he is now our brother-in-law, relative of our family. You should not have put him into such condition, because to cut one's enemy's head and similarly to save friends' hair, mosquitoes and bears is almost equally compared with death. After this, in order to pacify Rukmini, Lord Balaram said that he should not be very much sorry because your brother has been made very odd-looking from his bodily features. Everyone suffers or enjoys the result of his own action, but Balaram wanted to impress upon Rukmini that she should not have been sorry on the resultant action of his brother. There was no need of becoming too much affectionate to such brother. But Balaram again turned towards Kṛṣṇa and said, my dear Kṛṣṇa, a relative, even though he commits such a blunder as to be killed, he should be excused, because such relative, when he is conscious of his own fault, that consciousness itself is like death for him. Therefore, there is no need of killing such person. And again he turned towards Rukmini and informed her that the stern duty of the Kshatriya sect in the human society is so strict that in the fighting principle, his one's brother becomes enemy on the opposite side. A Kshatriya does not hesitate to kill his own brother. In other words, Lord Balaram wanted to instruct Rukmini that her brother Rukmini and Kṛṣṇa, although now happen to be a brother-in-law, but because there was fighting, both of them were right in not showing any mercy in family consideration. Sri Balaram continued to inform Rukmini that Kshatriyas are a typical emblem of materialistic way of life. Therefore, when there is fight between the Kshatriyas on account of kingdom or on account of land, wealth, women, prestige, power, or all of these, the Kshatriyas are generally very much puffed up. And whenever there is question of all this material acquisition, two belligerent Kshatriyas try to put one another in the most abominable condition. Balaram again turned towards Rukmini and began to instruct her that her affectionate consideration towards her brother was a sort of partiality shown by the ordinary materialistic person, because her brother Rukmini has created enmity with so many persons. His character was not at all adorable in the consideration of his treatment towards other friends, and still Rukmini, as an ordinary woman, was too much affectionate for her brother. Practically, he was not befitting to become her brother, and still Rukmini showed her leniency towards him. Besides that, any person who considers somebody as enemy, somebody as friend, or somebody as neutral, such considerations are generally made by persons who are in the concept of bodily life. In other words, such foolish persons become bewildered by the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord. Actually, the spirit soul in every embodiment of matter is of the same pure quality. But those who are not sufficiently intelligent, they see the pure spirit soul covered by the body as animal, man, literate, illiterate, rich, poor, and so on, with diverse differentiation. Such observations are purely on the basis of the body. Such differentiation is exactly like differentiating the fire on account of different size of the fuel. In other words, whatever size and shape of the fuel wood may be, when the fire comes out, there is no such varieties of size and shape, but that there is no difference of size and shape of the sky. After the destruction of the pots of different shape and size, this Balaram made the whole situation pretty much congenial by his moral and ethical instruction to both Rukmini and Kṛṣna. This body is a part of material manifestation consisting of the material elements, living condition, and interaction of the modes of material nature. The living entity, spirit soul, being in contact with them out of illusory enjoyment, is transmigrating from one body to another, and that is known as material existence. Actually, this contact of the living entity with this material manifestation has neither integration or disintegration, my dear chaste sister-in-law. Of course, the spirit soul is the cause of this material body, as much as the sun is the cause of sunlight, the eyesight, and the forms of material manifestation. The example of the sun, the sun sign and material manifestation is very appropriate in the matter of understanding the living entities' contact with this material world. In the morning, when there is sunrise, the heat and light expands gradually throughout the whole day, and a sun sign being the cause of all material production, the shapes and forms, integration and disintegration of material elements all take place. But as soon as the sun is set, the whole manifestation has nothing to do with the passing away of the sun from one place to another. When the sun passes from the eastern hemisphere to the western hemisphere, the interaction due to the sun sign in the eastern hemisphere remains, but the sun sign is visible again on the western hemisphere. Similarly, at a particular circumstances, the living entity accepts or produces a different kind of body and different kinds of bodily relationship. But as soon as the living entity gives up the present body and accepts another body, the former body has nothing to do with the living entity. Similarly, the next body accepted by the living entity has nothing to do with him. He is always free from the contact of this bodily contamination. Therefore, the conclusion is that the appearance and disappearance of the body has nothing to do with the living entity as much as the waxing and waning of the moon has nothing to do factually with the moon planet. When there is waxing of the moon, we falsely think that the moon is developing, and when there is waning of the moon, we think that the moon is decreasing. But actually the moon planet as it is always the same. It has nothing to do with such visible waxing and waning activities. This consciousness of material existence is just like the situation of a sleeping and a dreaming man. When a man sleeps, he dreams so many non-factual happenings, and as a result of such dreaming experience, he becomes subjected to different kinds of distress and happiness. Similarly, when a person is in material consciousness or a dreaming condition, in material existence, he suffers the effects of accepting a body and giving it up again. Opposite to this material consciousness is Kṛṣna consciousness. In other words, when a man is elevated to the platform of Kṛṣna consciousness, he becomes free from this false concept of life. In this way, Sri Balaram instructed about spiritual knowledge and addressed his sister-in-law as sweetly smiling Rukmini, do not be aggrieved by false notions out of ignorance only, just because on account of false notions only one becomes unhappy, but this unhappiness is immediately removed by discussing the philosophy of actual life. So be pleased on that platform only. Next paragraph. Rukmini also, after hearing such enlightening instruction from Sri Balaram, immediately became pacified and happy and adjusted her mental condition, which was very much afflicted on seeing the degraded position of her brother Rukmini. So far, Rukmini was concerned, neither his promise was fulfilled, nor his mission was successful. He came out of home with his soldiers and military flanks to defeat Kṛṣṇa and release his sister. But on the contrary, all his soldiers and military strength were lost. He was personally so much degraded. So in that condition, he was very, very sorry, but by the grace of the Lord, he could continue his life to the fixed up destination. Because he was a Kshatriya, he could remember his promise that he would not return to his capital city Kundin without killing Kṛṣṇa and releasing his sister, which he failed, and therefore he decided not to return to his capital city out of anger, and as such he constructed a small cottage in the village known as Bhojaka, and he began to reside there for the rest of his life. Next one. Now after this incident, Lord Kṛṣna, defeating all the opposing elements, he forcibly carried Rukmini and then brought her in his capital city, Dvāraka, and then married according to the Vedic ritualistic principle. After his marriage, Kṛṣna became the king of the Yadus at Dvaraka, and all the inhabitants were so happy that on the occasion of his marriage with Rukmini, every house there was great ceremonies. The inhabitants of Dvaraka city became so much pleased that they dressed themselves with the nicest possible ornaments and garments, and went to present gifts according to their means to the newly married couple, Kṛṣna and Rukmini. All the houses of Yadupuri, within bracket Dvaraka, was decorated with highly raised flags, festoons and flowers. In each and every house there was an extra constructed gate specifically prepared on this occasion, and on both sides of the gate there were big water jugs filled with water. The whole city was flavored by burning first quality incenses, and at night there was illumination by thousands of lamps decorated in each and every building. In this way, the whole city looked in jubilant feature on the occasion of Lord Kṛṣna's marriage with Rukmini. The whole city was profusely decorated with banana trees and betel nut trees. These two trees are considered very auspicious in such happy ceremonies. At the same time, there were assembly of many elephants who carried the respective kings from different friendly kingdoms. It is the habit of the elephants, whenever they see some small plants and trees, out of their sportive frivolous activities, they uproot such trees and throw it hither and thither. The elephants assemble on this occasion. They also attack the banana trees and the betel nut trees hither and thither, but in spite of their such action of intoxication, the whole city looked very, very nice on account of the trees being strewn here and there. The friendly kings, like the Kurus and the Pandavas, represented by Bhishma, Jarāsandha, the five Pandu brothers, the king Drupad, king Shantardhan, as well as Rukmini's father also joined the ceremony, although connection with the affair of Rukmini's kidnap by Kṛṣna, there was some misunderstanding between the two families. Still, Later on, Sri Balaram approached the king of Vidarbha, Bhishma, and was persuaded by many saintly persons. Thus, he was also induced to participate in the marriage ceremony of Kṛṣṇa with Rukmini. Although the incident of Kṛṣṇa's kidnapping Rukmini was not very happy occurrence in the kingdom of Vidarbha, still this kidnapping was not an unusual affair amongst the Kshatriyas. Almost in all marriages like that, this kidnapping business is current. Besides that, King Bhishma was from the very beginning inclined to hand over his beautiful daughter to Kṛṣṇa. So somewhere or other, his purpose being served, he was pleased to join the marriage ceremony, although his eldest son was degraded in the fight. In this marriage ceremony from Vrindavan, Maharaj Nanda and the cowherd boy also joined. That is mentioned in the Padma Purana. All the kings from different kingdoms like the Kurus, Sanjaya, Koikaya, Vidarbha, Kunti came to the Dvāraka in this connection, were seen loitering here and there very joyfully. Another specific performance was done, that the whole story of Rukmini's being kidnapped by Kṛṣna was made into poetry, and the professional reciters were reciting those poetries everywhere. All the assembled kings, and especially their daughters, were struck with wonder, became very much pleased by hearing the chivalrous activities of Kṛṣna. In this way, all visitors as well as the inhabitants of Dvaraka city, after seeing Kṛṣna and Rukmini together, in other words, the Supreme Lord, maintainer of everyone, and the goddess of fortune united together, all of them felt extremely jubilant. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of Kṛṣna, chapter 54, in the matter of Kṛṣna defeats all princes and takes Rukmini at home.